You are listening to the Wyn Thomas File.
And time for another guest on the Wyn Thomas File, and that is Mark Rees. He's back with his new book, Quirkey Cardiff. How are you, all right?
Very, very good, thank you. And it's always wonderful to catch up with you. And it seems like a book hasn't been published until I've spoken to you. This is sort of, we christen it and put it into the world. So very, very good. Thanks, Wyn.
Well, I got to say to you, what is quirky about Cardiff?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I've got an entire book about it. But what I try to do, and when I say tried, I mean, this is something that, I worked on with the publisher. It's the kind of book that people visiting Cardiff or people who are familiar with Cardiff, they might want to see things in the city, but not the obvious stuff. So a good example is, there's no point telling people Shirley Bassey was born in Cardiff, right? Everyone knows. People around the world know Shirley Bassey was born in Cardiff. That's not quirky. What they might not know is that the exact spot on which her house was now has a plaque on the floor. People just walk over the top of it because, Tiger Bay, Cardiff Bay, Tiger Bay as it was, has changed so much. People don't know about these quirky little details. So they're the kind of things I try to pull out, and they're things that people can engage with. So they can read the book, they can look at the picture, jump in their car, drive down the road and look at it. So that was my approach. Yeah,
so you've highlighted the lesser-known parts of Cardiff, haven't you, by doing this?
Exactly. It's lesser-known stuff. And hopefully there's stuff there that, even the locals, people born and bred, people who've never left Cardiff ever, hopefully there's something in there that is new to everyone.
Let's look at the book then. Buffalo Bill came to Cardiff in 1891 and did 4 shows at Sophia Gardens with sharpshooter Annie Oakley in the show. Great stuff that must have been in those days.
I do, and I love the fact, and I try not to bring everything back to ghost stories, but I do love the fact that one of Wales's most famous supposed spirits, Adelina Patti, was the one who invited him, because of course Adelina Patti was a huge star on the other side of the pond as well. People like Abraham Lincoln and stuff, big fans of Adelina Patti. So Patti's the one who got into to Wales rather than Cardiff specifically, but of course Cardiff is the capital. So if you're going to go somewhere, you go there. And I love the stories, but it's things like that made people in the valleys almost. It's a form of escapism. If your life is pretty, you get up, you go down the pit, and it's pretty grim and pretty rough from an early age. But you see these cowboys, you see these, exotic animals to some people. Buffalo, where did that come from? And you see these strange hats, these strange facial hair. Something like Buffalo Bill was a huge thing for the city. And it inspired a lot of people and gave them a great form of escapism.
And another guy, obviously, is associated with Cardiff, author Roald Dahl, of course, famous for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory fame. He was born in Cardiff and was also baptised in the Norwegian church in the Bay.
He was, and again, as with Shirley Bassey, I think telling people Roald Dahl was born in Cardiff isn't the quirkiest effect. That's something people can find out. You touched upon where he's baptised. That's a wonderful little building that's still there now. It's quite an iconic little white building on the front. But while Roald Dahl obviously made it big, and he left Cardiff behind, and he settled in England. He's buried in England, but so many of his family remained. You can visit their graves, you can visit their houses and things, and there are these wonderful connections with Dahl that again go beyond the obvious things of Roald Dahl himself.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, of course. You mentioned Shirley Bassey, famously born in Tiger Bay. Not very long. She wasn't there very long, was she? She moved after she was about 2 years of age. Is that right?
Yeah, and again, that building is no longer there where she was, and she was above I haven't got the book handy, above a cafe or something. She was above something. She was above the top flat, and if you trace her career, a lot. Because she started off singing in some of the sort of spit and sawdust type pubs in the area. Some of those buildings are still there, or if not, you can go to the location where they were. And her big break on the stage was at the New Theatre, which, of course, is still there and is a very famous Cardiff landmark. So, again, if you wanted to do a little Shirley Bassey pilgrimage, there are plenty of places you can go to that are a little bit off the beaten track and are, to use the word again, a little bit quirky.
So while we're talking about the New Theatre, obviously the Welsh National Opera started in Cardiff during the Second World War. not professionally, but as a passion from followers. I know you're a big opera guy, so that must have been quite a story for you to cover, yeah?
I love it, yeah. And as mentioned, I've shoehorned ghosts in. Now we're shoehorning opera in, which are my two big passions, really. And Adelina Patney ticks both of those boxes: an opera star and a ghost, supposedly. Welsh National Opera, again, it's one of those wonderful, wonderful Welsh stories. And this is what makes it so sad that it's in such a bad state in recent times. But it wasn't made by operatic superstars with loads of money, like it might be. It wasn't like Paris where you had people throwing money at it. This was it was the local butcher. He'd be working in his shop, shut the shop, and then use his time in the evening for these people to get together. And they managed to get enough people in one place to put on it's good timing, actually. The very first opera was Cavaliera Rusticana, which takes place at Easter, which is looming. It's only a few weeks away as we record this, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And there was a really emotional moment, I thought, during the early days of COVID, during the lockdowns, when we were all stuck in our houses, we didn't know what was going on. Welsh National Opera filmed some sort of socially distanced videos for the internet. You've got the chorus, but the chorus are all miles apart from each other. And they walked around the streets of Cardiff. They retraced those steps where those people had formed, all those years ago in the 1940s. And they sang the Easter hymn from that particular opera, which it's still out there on YouTube for people to see. It's a really touching moment. But Welsh National Opera, if it wasn't for the events of the last few years, you could say this is such an incredibly Welsh story. Working class people who just love it's the love of singing that brings them together. Became into this world respected organisation. The last few years have cast a bit of a shadow on it. And I'm really, really hoping opera season kicks off again in 2 weeks, I think. So I'm really hoping they've turned a corner. They've got some new people in charge who, touch wood, are doing a great job, and onwards to bigger and better things. But yes, it was opera in Wales was on shaky ground for a little while. Oh,
right, okay. Now then, if nobody knew you, they'd know you're a big fan of Supernatural. So there must be some Supernatural in the book. Give us one.
There is. I mean, I had to be very careful. I have published a book called Paranormal Cardiff a few years ago, and I didn't want to double up and just repeat all the same stuff in another book. Right. So I've been very, very selective, and I've used sort of one or two entries from that. But one which I think is more quirky than paranormal, really, it's such a wonderful story, is the story of Andrew Vicari, the painter, who born and raised in Port Talbot, went to the Slade in London to learn his trade. People like Lucien Freud and stuff. And he was, according to him at least anyway, but he was at his peak, the highest paid painter in the entire world. He was getting so much money from the Saudi royal family and people. He had some really, really big clients. And when the Millennium Stadium, as it was called, it's called the Principality now, but when the Millennium Stadium was first opened, they had what they called a cursed changing room, or the Room of Doom, it was called by the press, the Room of Doom. And the reason for this is because whenever a team was put in the Room of Doom, they would lose a major game. And at the time, Wembley was closed. So at the time, you had all these really big sort of Premier League English football clubs coming to Wales, and whoever was in that room lost. So Arsenal lost, Tottenham lost, Chelsea lost. There's a lovely story with Chelsea where by this stage, people were talking about this cursed room, and Chelsea brought their lucky socks with them. And even their lucky socks didn't help them beat this curse. So in the end, they had someone doing, it was bordering on voodoo type stuff. They had someone come in to sort of, waving sage around and trying to bless the place and trying to do anything to break this curse. And in the end, it was suggested that maybe just the room just needed to be uplifted visually. So the call out was put out, let's find an artist to come in and do something. And it was Andrew Vicari, that this super financially successful artist from Port Talbot, who was back home at the time, volunteered his services. He went there, he painted this mural. It's a lovely mural of, this phoenix sort of rising from the ground, lots of reds, lots of yellows and oranges, a big burning sun behind it and a horse. And whether or not it's thanks to Andrew Vicari's mural or not, but Stoke City then became the first team to win from that Room of Doom, and they got promoted to the Premier League, I'm assuming. It was the Championship or the equivalent at the time. So that's what I love, because that's not my usual kind of, ooh, spooky haunted house type story. That's a much quirkier story, but it still deals with potentially supernatural themes.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, that's where we leave it, because I don't want to go and do any more, because I want people to buy the book, obviously. So that's Mark Rees, my guest on the Wyn Thomas File, and Quirkey Cardiff. Thanks very much today.
Thank you, Wyn. Always good to talk to you.